course, so I have it on there. Name and title for me.
Yeah, Rick Weigel, Inspector of Administrative Services.
Perfect. Okay, so as you just said, you guys are in favor of the long gun registry. I'm assuming that Chief McGrogan's up there right now and put his support behind it. Maybe talk to me first of all about why you guys have thrown your support behind the long gun registry.
Well, we believe there's a lot of components of the registry that are very beneficial to the community and to the public. What is of note is the ability for the police in cases of, let's say, domestic disturbance where or in cases where people are suffering from mental illness or are under mental stress and they come to our attention, either through a domestic or otherwise in the case of people suffering from mental stress, we have the ability, if they've displayed that they're a risk to themselves or others, but maybe haven't committed a criminal offense, that it's an opportunity that we can check the registry. And if they have weapons that are registered to them, then it might not be in the public interest for them to have it at this time. So under the criminal code in those cases, we have the ability to obtain a warrant and recover those weapons and keep them for safekeeping, submit it to a justice of the peace, and then they can be returned to the individual at the appropriate time. And that obviously can avert a lot of disasters, because when people are under stress and they have access to firearms, we can have tragedies that we've seen across Canada.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how often this tool is utilized within Medicine Hat Police Service? Is it like several times a month or once a month?
I never pulled the numbers, but my understanding is we use it on a regular basis. Obviously, I'm not on the street at this time, but our members use it on a regular basis through the Canadian Police Information Centre, CPIC, that we use regularly. The information is available.
Okay.
Steve, I would just go back. The one thing I didn't say that I think is important is we come into contact with those individuals that are under that mental stress or have shown signs that they're at risk to themselves or others. And I mentioned that the registry allows us to see if they have weapons registered to that house. If we don't have that registry, we don't know. And lots of times, family members are afraid to tell us in the circumstances, or they're under the influence of that person, so they don't have the ability to tell us. We might suspect there's firearms in that house, but that doesn't give us the grounds to go in there. We have to convince a judge that there's firearms in that house. So if we have a registry that says, hey, at least these guns are supposed to be in that house, that person has an obligation to, if their address changes and that, to have the address of the firearms changed. So we know that there's supposed to be firearms in that address. We can present that information to a judge, and that's usually sufficient, with proper cause that the person shouldn't have, it's not in the best interest for them to have the firearms to get in there. Otherwise, we don't have the grounds, and then that risk is out there for the members of that family or friends of that person or the community.
That's a very good point. That touched on a bit of my next question, some of the negative effects that could occur if this was scrapped. That's obviously one. Anything else you can foresee if this registry was scrapped that would be a negative effect on this community?
Well, just the police response. If we have knowledge of pre-existing firearms, then our response to a particular call might be different. Now, we always go in, we want to go in with officer safety and the community safety in mind whenever we do anything, whether it be a warrant at a house or otherwise. But if there are firearms that are known, then it's not just intelligence, we have that knowledge, and that would affect our response. And we might up the response, which will make it safer to the public and the community. You don't want to go in with a low-key response if it shouldn't be, because then that creates issues.
And one final question for you. I suppose Medicine Hat Police Service will continue to throw their support behind this registry. I think until the vote is made in September, I believe it is. So you guys are going to be voicing your support behind this, or?
Yeah, we have as an individual service. Obviously, the Alberta Association of Chiefs of Police, which Chief McGrogan is a member of, has released resolutions on it, which I could provide to you. The Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police support it, which the chief is part of, as well as the Canadian Association of Police Boards, which is the national governing body, which members of that group represent the governing bodies of most of the police services across Canada, and they're supportive of it. So it's not just us. A lot of people see tremendous value in it. Is it perfect? No. Do we have issues with it at times? Yes. Could it be streamlined? Yes. Could a little more resources be put into it so it's more efficient and effective for the community and for us? You bet.
Can you maybe touch on what some of those issues may be?
Well, one of the big things is Chief McGrogan, our service, as well as a lot of other services, although we support the registry, there's significant support to decriminalize aspects of it. We want criminals that use weapons to be punished for that, and that there be a big deterrent for them not to use those. But, you know, we hear a lot of the individual that has a sporting rifle that maybe he doesn't register, or those kinds of things. Well, in those cases, do we need to make that a criminal offense? And right now, it's a criminal offense, but there's an ongoing amnesty for a lot of those situations that have been going on for years. Well, that's not effective. If something has a long-term amnesty, is that effective? What might be more effective is that you make it similar to, and I'm not trying to make a comparison, but similar to registration of vehicles. That's not a criminal offense if you don't have your vehicle registered, but it's a regulatory thing, and there's a penalty and there's a fine, but it's not criminal, and you don't get a criminal record for that. And there's still penalties if you don't do certain things. You could have it where they still lose the access to their weapons for a period of time. But generally speaking, it would be a small penalty, and it's a reminder to take care of your weapons safely. And then we know where they are, which is different than the average criminal that's using it for illegal purposes.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That answers all my questions, unless there's anything else you want to add on there, or people should know.
I'm just trying to, let me peek here.
Okay.
No, I guess that's it.
Perfect.
Okay.